We are live on the beat, the number one live UNC podcast on Thursday nights. We have cornered that niche. The four of us are here tonight to talk about UNC basketball and all things UNC sports. I'm producer John. We have Tommy, we have Adam, we have Evan. Shout out to Jeremiah, who is covering the UNC women's basketball team right now in their game against NC State. We'll have to do score updates on that. I'm not sure what the score is.
They
I'm
were
gonna.
winning at halftime.
There we
So
go. Winning at halftime. I'm gonna come to you first, Tommy. It's been a big week on the beat. We got some football players, early enrollees this week, preparing for the big game against Virginia as well this weekend. What's on your mind to start tonight, Tommy?
no, I mean it's been a while since I've been here. I think it's been 3 weeks since I've been on the show with you guys.
Is that right?
Yeah, because Joey had it last week. We had third string quarterback. Who would that be at Carolina? Jefferson Boaz.
That's right.
Joey Powell was last week, and then John, you did it 2 weeks ago because I was at a concert. And so yeah, it's been a while, but a lot of news going around Carolina. Obviously, Adam's been working his rear end off ahead of On the Beat podcast, so you got that out there. And then I wanted to ask you guys. I did not get a chance to get up there, but you guys got to talk to all these young fellas on, I guess, Wednesday.
Yeah,
Yesterday,
even though it feels like 3 days ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
Really. What did y'all glean from that? I mean, what can you glean from a high school young man that's enrolled early at Carolina, Adam, that maybe you didn't know? I thought Merdinger's comments were pretty interesting, but everybody else is just like, all it does is make me feel old. It
Well, yeah,
really
that
does.
you beat me to it because I was going to say when you're in the aging process like I am, the light bulb goes off when you're talking to some of these fellas. Oh, my daughter is the same age as them. Like, like she's going to be in the same UNC class with these fools, but I mean, I enjoyed it. Like I always, it's, you never know what to expect, when you're talking to somebody you've never talked to before. And, I thought it was enjoyable, honestly. I thought Merdinger was great. I mean, all the videos are on the YouTube channel. We got 8 guys yesterday of the early enrollees. We're going to get 8 more next week or the week after. And we even got some on signing day. We got Jordan Ship and guys like that on signing day. So there's videos all over the place. But it's like one of the things I've said, TA, is that it never ceases to surprise me how polished these guys are at this age. Just they're not, bothered by someone sticking a camera in their face or somebody sticking a recorder in their face. It just totally, it's not a thing, And interesting bloodlines, like the Rosinski kid, the offensive lineman, like his grandfather was the voice of the Carolina Panthers at one point. Like he knows. I'm not a big wrestling guy, but I know the accent, it would fool you on that. But I think his granddad knows Jim, like best friends with Jim Ross, the wrestling commentator. Just pretty fascinating dudes. I mean, the Javarius Green. I remember his dad playing for the Detroit Lions and the Carolina Panthers. So Merdinger was great. He's telling us that he had like a dang 5.2 GPA. And I'm like, isn't it a scale of 4? Our cohort, Andrew Jones over at Tar Heel Illustrated, had a great line when we were videoing him because we were like, you got to be kidding me. He's like, yeah, that would have been my GPA if you multiplied it a couple of times. I thought it was an excellent line from AJ. But yeah, I mean, like, it's a little weird because you sit there and you think about, we may not ever talk to these guys again. We might not ever talk to them again. And you also think about, we might not talk to these guys for 3 more years. You think about the linemen. I mean, like we talked to the 2 tight ends yesterday. Carolina's loaded at tight end. How is Ryan Ward going to get on the field ahead of Nesbitt, Copenhaver, and Jake Johnson?
Exactly.
So it was interesting. It was informative. They all are fantastic. Seem to be fantastic young men. It's a feel good thing to watch, I would say, and it's good to get to know them. It was fun getting to know these guys.
Evan, let me ask you a question. Talking about that, I mean, you're in school at Carolina. What's it like interviewing classmates? I always thought that because, I go and I cover the baseball game, and obviously Grace is with us. She's a student. The DTH people are there. They're all students. What's it like interviewing literally your classmates?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun, cool, interesting dynamic. I was joking around after it might have just been the Virginia Tech game when I was interviewing Seth Trimble, and I had asked him some question, and I remember the first words that came out of his mouth were like, "Yes, sir," and that kind of caught me off guard because I'm like, I think I'm 4 months older than that kid or something like that. I mean, we were the same exact age. So that is always kind of the funny things, and that's happened before, and it just kind of makes me laugh inside because I'm like, we're the same exact age, and it's always fun. But yeah, I mean, it's always something that, especially when I first started out in this, industry in college, it kind of takes you a little bit to get used to, just because like you mentioned, I'm usually surrounded by a lot of older guys asking younger guys questions, and I'm the young guy with the young guys kind of. But I also think it can kind of be fun in a ways to be like, I understand what, to an extent, some of the things maybe that they're going through outside of, the sport or something like that, and can kind of understand that perspective that they're going through, especially when you have a season as long as basketball, where it's, can stretch upwards of 5+ months. You kind of have that interesting little perspective there. But yeah, no, the Trimble thing definitely was pretty funny. That recent thing that happened, I think it might have been just the last game.
Yeah, I'd have been like, bro, I sit beside you in Econ 10. What's up with the surf stuff? Let me ask y'all this question, and John, you can get in here, and then I'm going to turn it completely over to John. I heard a debate on the Cover 3 podcast, which is Fornelli and Bud and Chip and Danny Cannell, and they were debating whether when you interview a coach, you call them coach or their first name. I've always said coach. They're not my coach, but it's like, that's Coach Smith or that's Coach Williams. It's always bothered me when people said Roy, or not necessarily Mac, but I guess Mac or Hubert or things like that. Adam, you've been doing it a long time, and I mean, you're around them. I guess maybe because I'm not around them as much, so there's not that relationship that maybe guys like yourself that have been around them more. But what do you think about that aspect of this job? Is it a coach? It's not a coach-player relationship, obviously. But Tom Fornelli was saying like it's a subservient thing to call them coach and all that. And I just kind of thought it was a respect thing. I don't know. What do you think, Adam?
It's a great inside baseball question. You know what I mean? Like we could go on this for the next 3 hours and nobody would give a damn. But like, you and I are essentially the same age, Tommy, and but the sort of the way I was raised in the business is, I think, what Tom Fornelli is talking about in terms of like, he's not your coach, she's not your coach, was what I was always taught. I mean, so, and for whatever reason, I'm a big believer in what I'm always taught. Like, I guess it was very convincing when I was Evan's age, but yeah, I always called Roy. Have always called Mac. I have always done that, but I will say, I have never called Mike Krzyzewski Mike. I've always called him Coach or Coach K. And I guess I'm just kind of a scared little weenie in that regard. I've never called him Mike. I've thought of that before. I've like, why don't you call him Mike? But and everyone, all the former coaches, going back to Bunting, I called Bunting John, and he could have stuffed me in a trash can if he wanted to. You know what I mean? Like, and also, I think also it's how much comfort you have with those guys or girls. I mean this with respect. Charlotte Smith, the former UNC basketball player, I covered her for a long time. She's the head coach at Elon. She will scare the living crap out of you. I'm scared of Charlotte Smith. I am.
She was a bad woman at
She's
Carolina.
Intimidating, man. She's intimidating. One of my best friends was a practice player for the UNC women when we were in school, and he was scared to death of Charlotte Smith then. But I always called her Charlotte. But like she was one that I always sort of tiptoed around a little bit. Very, not to get off the rails at all, but I actually told Charlotte Smith that Kobe Bryant had died on the day that helicopter went down. I was covering a Elon, Delaware women's basketball game, and she came over to me during a timeout and said, "I hear all these people behind us talking about Kobe. What happened?" And I told her, I said, "Apparently he passed away." Anyway, I see where you're coming from with Coach Tommy. I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all, but for whatever reason, I've always generally called them by their first names. I don't know. I guess that's just how I am, but I don't think there's anything wrong with saying coach.
Yeah, it's interesting. I called somebody in the press room last Friday, Mister, and I'm not going to say who it was, but you heard him cuss me. He said, I can't repeat it on air. He said, "You better not ever do that again." But I've just always, he's famous, and people in here would certainly know who he was. But I don't know. It's just always felt weird to me to call people I don't truly know by their first name. And that's why I mentioned the relationship thing, that you're around them a lot more than me. I mean, we do, when we talk to Mac, we say Mac or whatever. But anyway, what do you think, Evan, from your
if
side?
I can jump in real quick, I was going to say I felt like even more of a nerd than I am when we were in the Bahamas, and I went scuttling into, after Carolina beat Arkansas in the third place game, I went zooming in there to try to get Eric Musselman, and I did. I was like, is he still going? And I got in there and I was like, so I asked him a couple questions, and I realized I'm going, Eric. And then I realized, oh, guess what? Literally everyone else is calling him Muss. And I'm the dork that's saying, Eric. So I wasn't cool enough to call him Muss. I wasn't smart enough to think about calling him Muss there. But go ahead, Evan. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was going to say, I think for the most part, I always say coach just because I'm still 20. And I don't know. I think it'd feel weird for me to refer to someone of that age, by their first name. I'm trying to think if I've ever done it. I think maybe if there was a coach I've done it with prior, it's probably been Mac more than Hubert, just because I've been around Mac a little bit more than I have been around Hubert. But yeah, for the most part, it's usually just coach, but not like Coach Davis or anything like that. It's always just coach.
And I'll tell you,
it's an interesting dynamic.
And I'll tell you, as a student journalist as well, asking a question of a coach like Roy Williams or Hubert Davis is stressful enough to begin with. I can still remember one time after practice asking Larry Fedora a question. And this was pretty early on in my internship with Inside Carolina. And I said or I might have been with the DTH at the time. I can't quite remember. But I said something to the effect of, how is Tom doing this season? What have you been impressed with from Tom's play? So right off the bat, I guess I made the mistake of calling a player by the player's first name. And Coach Fedora looked at me and he said, "Who's Tom?" And I froze up so badly. I was referring to Tom Shelton, who is the UNC punter. Okay. So perhaps he was not looking ahead to a question about his punter. And, he eventually, I kind of said like Tom Shelton or something. I kind of spit that out. And, Larry gave an answer that he often gave, his style of answer there. But I just wanted to add that in there. It's stressful enough for some student journalists when you're starting out on the beat to begin asking questions. So I would always go with coach just as a sign of respect. Let's not mix anything up that doesn't need to be mixed up.
Well, in fairness, Fedora probably didn't know who you were talking about.
Adam, special teams was his thing, right? So.
Oh yeah, that's accurate. So maybe I could be mistaken. Adam, first coach you ever talked to? I can tell you, for me, it was Bill Guthridge.
Oh man, I think it was a football coach at Graham High School. Pat Moser. Pat Mosier is his name. You mean in terms of interviewing them?
Yeah. Like when you first got into the gig, first interview you had.
20 years old. Deadly handsome.
Hair,
everything. Possibilities in front of me. Abs. No.
Who would have thought?
No, yeah, I think it was Pat Mosier at Graham High School, who some of those guys I still see, and I actually do. I mean, I'm in my freaking 40s now. I do. There was an old coach at Elon named Al Seagraves, football coach. He coached at the Citadel forever, just the greatest guy in the world. like the epitome of a football coach. And I saw him, and we actually had a moment at Village Grill in Burlington, North Carolina, where we were getting a little teary-eyed. And I was thanking him for not like killing me when I was, 22 years old. I'm sure I was asking him the worst questions in the world, and like, I'm sure my writing was horrible too, but like, a lot of these guys put up with me for a while when I was Evan's age, not nearly as polished as Evan is. But anyway, like, I'm lucky some of those guys put up with me.
It's cool. I mean, but like, you obviously, this is what your life work is. I lucked into this deal, and the next thing I know, I'm interviewing or talking to Bill Guthridge. I mean, it was ridiculous, and that's when Coach Guthridge said outside Carolina instead of inside Carolina.
Oh man!
But that was his dry humor.
Yeah.
We'll try to put up that. But anyway, it's been a heck of a ride over the last little bit. Anybody got a good quote from the week? We've mentioned the football players. Y'all talked about post-Virginia Tech. Evan, I'm going to put you on the hot spot. And by the way, Carolina is up 61-51, at least on my delayed thing at the end of the third quarter. But Evan, quote of the week. Give it to me. You got 2 minutes.
Yeah, this is a quote that when Hubert said it, me and Adam kind of looked at each other and I stole it. Look at that.
The reason I was going Hubert was I thought you would go somewhere else.
But I think it's important going into this weekend.
It is.
All the games that are going
on.
on.
The same brain here.
But yeah, this is before the Virginia Tech game, and someone had asked Hubert about his thoughts on the ACC regular season title race.
It was me. I asked him.
Was it you?
No.
I'm stealing basically your quote then.
It's okay. I mean, I think it was. I think it's so relevant now.
But Hubert said it's important. It means something. It means something to us. It means something to this program. And I let the guys know that it's been since 2019 since we were co-champions with Virginia. And that means a great deal to me and a great deal to us in terms of having an opportunity and a chance to compete for a regular season ACC title. So like, Adam had mentioned, and I think he mentioned it to me and Jeremiah today, it's like Judgment Day for the ACC in terms of its standings on Saturday, because you've got UNC playing Virginia, who are the first and third teams in the standings. And then you've got Duke at Wake Forest. And obviously Duke, UNC record-wise are tied for first. UNC has the head-to-head. And then Wake Forest is fourth in the conference, I think 9-6. So obviously they're kind of outside of race for first place. But, it's going to be as soon as Saturday clocks midnight. I mean, you're going to have a pretty good understanding of just how this race is going to shake out. And I think everyone's aware of the UNC history at Virginia. And I think the Duke at Wake Forest game could be pretty interesting too, because if I'm not mistaken, I think Wake is the only undefeated team at home left in the ACC. They're 14-0.
You're absolutely right.
And
top 4 teams in the league playing each other on Saturday, baby. I mean,
yep.
The only person who probably won't be excited to see that is Joe Lenardi. So,
well, what's interesting is it's Carolina, Duke, Wake, Virginia, your traditional ACC teams, all up there at the top. That was interesting, Adam, about how Hubert got fired up, and he got worked up about that. And I wanted to bend your ear about as to why do you think he got so fired up on that? And I think, here's my take.
Okay.
I think it's important for them to win something. Right? Armando Bacot and R.J. Davis, for all they've done for Carolina, other than that Final Four Duke win, which is huge, they haven't won anything. And I think that's part of the reason why Hubert wants them. It's kind of like Marcus Page never winning the national championship.
Yeah.
I think, obviously, RJ and Armando need to win something. Hubert desperately wants it because it's always meant something to him. But I think a lot of that was for that reason. What do you think there? Because the tone changed when that question came up.
Wasn't it like a needle scratch, like back in the day? Like, like.
Oh, he was getting into it. He was like, "You're going to get me fired up now." And
I mean, that's what I was gonna. It's very cute that Evan and I had the same quote. Actually, I think that just warms my heart. But yeah, like the way I was gonna set it up was, you just never know what you're going to get with Hubert. And I don't mean that in like some awful negative way. I just mean when you ask him a question, Hubert could go completely canned answer that we all have heard for the last 3 years, discipline in the details, tweak, pivot, and alter. Or he could tell you that in 1982, when UNC was playing Georgetown for the national championship, he had a Boy Scout meeting that night, literally had a Boy Scout, Hubert the Boy Scout. And his parents would not let him get out of the Boy Scout meeting early to go home and watch Worthy, Perkins, Jordan, Jimmy Black, those guys take on Patrick Ewing in Georgetown. Like, that is freaking fascinating. But that leads into what I was going to say is that, you know, I think we need to give Aaron Beard from the Associated Press, one of my UNC classmates, some credit, because he had asked, you know, Evan and TA will remember, he had asked Hubert sort of a question about the evolution of college basketball and the college basketball that he played versus what they're coaching now. And Hubert was getting in a good mood. You know, he'd said he never saw J.R. Reed take a 3-pointer. You know, like, I thought that was a fun answer. And then I don't know. I just was thinking, like, we're getting down the home stretch here. Does Hubert, does Jeff Lebo, does Sean May, do these guys really sort of emphasize we could win an ACC regular season title? So that's why the question kind of fell out of my mouth. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, he went from goofing off and laughing to just being extremely serious. You know, his eyes were getting big. And you're right. That's a good impersonation, Tom. He was scooting up in his seat.
Oh, yeah. He was ready to go. I mean, he was like, I'm 53 and I can't play.
And it is. The last time UNC won it outright was 2016, the ACC regular season title. They shared it with UVA in 2019 when Duke, UVA, and Carolina were all number 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament. So, yeah, I think maybe it was David Klein in the chat that was saying that Cadeau was 7 years old the last time UNC won at UVA. I can tell you the year was 2012. The last time UNC won a men's basketball game in Charlottesville, which is, I mean, it's over a decade, obviously. It's a long dang time.
And Virginia, somebody asked me today, and said, what's Carolina going to do at Virginia this year? And I said, until they beat them, I'm going to assume they're going to lose. And this is a Virginia grad. And he said which also drives me nuts, but that's another story. He said, well, we got beat by 30 against Virginia Tech. You don't think Carolina can win? I said, that game is irrelevant to what will happen on Saturday. But anyway, John Bauman, get in here.
Let's set that up, because this is a big game on Saturday. Virginia does not come into this game playing very well. I was looking earlier this evening at barttorvik.com, which has sort of become a favorite of the Twitterverse. You know, playing around with the date ranges, things like that. So I did a little bit of that as well. Since February 9th, UVA is 2-2. They are 199th in offense nationally per his metrics, and 110th in defense. Now, it's a very small sample size, 4 games. But over the course of the season, Virginia has been a great, if not an elite defense over the last 4 games. They have slipped a little bit off that perch. But nevertheless, it remains a humongous game for North Carolina in the ACC, not just to get that historical monkey off their back of beating Virginia in Charlottesville, but taking control of the ACC race like we talked about. So I'm going to start with Evan actually on this one. When you look at and kind of think about this game Saturday, what stands out to you, be it a stat or a matchup for UNC Virginia?
I think the biggest historical stat that I've found, aside from them, obviously UNC not winning since 2012, is that in 5 last times UNC has played at UVA, they've scored under 50 points. They've scored over 50 once, and that was, I think, the most recent when they had 58. So I think that right in itself is, if you want to talk about a key to the game or what's going to decide the game in terms of UNC's perspective, and especially with, you know, UVA has always been, as everyone knows, a team that's defensive oriented, but even more so this year, they really lack the offensive firepower that they even had with some of those really good defensive teams. I mean, Reese Beekman maybe on some nights can get going. McNeely, I know percentage-wise, is a pretty good three-point shooter, but I mean, really outside of those two guys, they really struggle offensively. And I was looking as a team, I think they shoot like 64% from the line. The Wake Forest game that they won at home, 49-47, Virginia shot 9% from the free throw line in a game and won.
And the one they made was with 6 seconds left.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
I do not know.
How is that possible? One for 11. It was 1 for 11, right?
1 for 11. Yeah.
How is that freaking possible? It's unbelievable.
And then the next game, I think Wake Forest scored 91 against Pitt and had over 50 in the first half. But so yeah, I mean, if you look at in terms of what UNC wants to do, I mean, I think if UNC scores over 60, 65 points, I think you're giving yourself a pretty good chance to win the game. It's just a matter of, are they going to be able to do that? And I think history would suggest it's going to be a rather tall task. And shout out to the comment that said Elliot Cadeau is 7. I think I was 8 years old last time UVA. And
you were 8. You were 8 in 2012.
I was 8 in February 2012.
Jesus Christ!
I was gonna joke that you were in pre-K or something. I wasn't far off. I mean, that's
you
just a
were
few
not.
years.
I think I was either second or third grade then.
How about
Second,
the
maybe?
Jesus Christ from TA under his breath? Jesus Christ. I love it. I love it.
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a game that for UNC, you know, the talks of the defensive struggles that UNC has had maybe these last 2 weeks, I don't think are going to be a topic just because I think UVA is so porous offensively. It's going to be a game that if we're talking about a UNC win next week, it's going to be a game that UNC won by getting over that 60-65 mark home.
Let me ask you this on that, and I'll bring you in here, Adam. Hubert talked about they've shot more three-pointers than they've shot free throws. If they do that Saturday, they will lose at Virginia. What do you think about that? They have got to get Baycott going somehow, some way in this game and not be impatient and just jack three-pointers, because that's what Virginia wants you to do. If you hit them, you're going to beat them. If you don't, you're going to get smothered out. But I think that is the stat I'm watching, three-pointers versus free throws.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Carolina's the better team. Carolina's the more talented team. I mean, they're more talented almost at every position, I would say. I do think Ryan Dunn's a good player, but Carolina's better. Now, whether that translates into a win or not, that Virginia style, it's just, God, it's so unappealing. I can't stand it, honestly. Think about this. The last 2 games that UVA has played, they've scored 49 points and 41 points total in these games. They won the damn game when they scored 49. I mean, it's so gross. It's so gross. But that's Tony Bennett's backline defense. But yeah, with Baker, one of the things I might like to write about it Saturday if the opportunity presents. Who knows if it will, TA? But one of the things I think about with UVA is last year and Armando getting hurt 70 seconds or whatever it was into the game. I think it was less than 2 minutes. He's going for an offensive. The ironic thing is, I think he kept an offensive rebound line 2 or 3 times just from sheer hustle, and he turns his ankle and didn't play the rest of the game. Obviously, Armando's a UVA guy. A Virginia guy. He's from Richmond. Tons of friends and family there. And he leaves the building on crutches after playing a minute 30 or whatever it was, a minute 20. So this is Armando's last time in the Commonwealth. He wants to win the game. If you establish Armando, it was a couple of years ago, what was it? He had the 29-22 game. I think it was against UVA, 29 points, 22 boards.
In the Smith Center. Just
he dominated. He dominated.
Mm-hmm.
And he could do that again. I just think I think UNC is a better team. I think they have the better personnel. I think they're playing better. I think their ceiling is so much higher. I think they're going to go further in the NCAA tournament. How would you like to bet on UVA's chances in the NCAA tournament? Anybody feeling frisky on that one?
No.
I would say a loss in Dayton would be my bet on UVA.
But anyway, that boa constrictor that they have for defense certainly could make this thing completely gross. And, I had been saying to my dear friend, IC legendary photographer Jim Hawkins in our many travels recently, because we love to sort of break down the schedule. I had been saying I could see UNC losing at Virginia, but winning at Duke. And now I'm not so. Now I'm like, how are they going to lose to Virginia other than if it's just the grossest game you've ever seen? I think they're so much better than Virginia. I don't mean it to be the kiss of death. But yeah, we'll see. I do think the weight of history, I think RJ Davis and Armando Bacot know it very well how much UNC has struggled there over the last 10, 12, 13 years. And I think it would be another sign if they're able to win of this being a special season. I think it'd be like the latest piece of evidence to that effect.
John, take us to an ad break. Carolina 74, 64, 446 left.
You are listening to On the Beat Live. We have 102 viewers watching live with us. We appreciate every single one of you. We especially appreciate Uncle Dave, Ocular Pat Down on YouTube, who gives a shout out to his nephew, Evan. So thank you, Uncle Dave, for watching. Thanks, everyone, for watching live with us. We want to take a quick second to celebrate our sponsors, not just shout them out because we really appreciate them. They support all of our shows. They support this show. I'm talking about Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity HR. With Johnny T-Shirt, we know that spring is coming. If you're like Tommy Ashley and you've been at Boschmer Stadium watching the Tar Heels, you realize the weather's changing. It's getting a little nicer outside. Maybe you need to go get some more UNC gear. You can head on over to Franklin Street to purchase that at Johnny T-Shirt. They support us, so we try to support them as much as possible. You can also check them out online. They have a great store online as well. Inside Carolina Premium subscribers get 10% off. We're going to take a quick break. Let the national guys pay the bills, as Tommy always says. We'll be right back with more UNC basketball talk here on The Beat. All right, we are back. It is 9:36 here on the East Coast on Tuesday evening. We're talking about UNC's big matchup against Virginia on Saturday in Charlottesville. I think another big piece of this game, when I start to look at it and break it down, is rebounding. It's so critical anytime you're playing against Virginia to dominate on the boards, and that is one of UNC's strengths. UNC leads the ACC in rebounding, and UNC put out an interesting stat that speaks to their aptitude in that department. Let's see. Armando Bacot and Harrison Ingram rank 1-2 in all games, while Ingram leads and Bacot is second in league action. They are the first pair of Tar Heels to average 9 or more rebounds since John Henson and Tyler Zeller in the 2011-2012 season, when evidently Evan was 8 years old that season. But I think that speaks to this team's dominance on the boards. I think that's going to play a big piece in Saturday's game.
And wasn't it the Zeller dunk in 12 that sealed the Carolina game at UVA? Adam, we don't do predictions here because y'all have to cover them, but are you really sure Carolina is that much better than Virginia? You sound pretty sure of that. And I'm a creature of habit, and habit's been to go up there and come back sad for the Tar Heels. I think Carolina is to be able to do, going back to what Hubert talked about, the ACC championship regular season, I think you got to get this one because I don't think Duke's going to lose to Wake. They could, but I just don't see it. And you don't want it coming down to Duke, Carolina to tie in Cameron. But yeah, final thoughts on Carolina, Virginia, and then Evan will get yours. And then we're going to go back a week and we're going to get a great story before we get out of here from both of these guys. But Adam, final thoughts on Carolina, Virginia.
TA, you know I love you and respect you to the ends of the earth. I've actually got Wake beating Duke on Saturday in Winston. I feel like if ever there is going to be a moment where the Deeks finally get one of these gotta have it games, I feel like they're going to have their hair on fire. They're supposed to give out 10,000 free tie-dyed shirts to people coming in the building. I mean, Wake is a different team at home, So I've got Wake beating Duke, and I've got UNC beating UVA. And I don't mean to thumb my nose at how it's gone in Charlottesville. Maybe I have a recency bias of I have watched Virginia play recently, and I have been grossed out by them. I do think Reese Beekman is a very nice player, and I think defensively he's great, and you have to respect him defensively. But I just think the guys they come off the bench with, I just think Carolina's a better team. I got a stat for you. I meant to work it in earlier. This is kind of interesting. Our friend Connor O'Neill, who covers Wake and Duke, has been following it. So entering last week, guys, ACC teams coming off their bye, their open date on the schedule, were only 1-10. So you're coming off the bye. You've lost 9 of 10 teams had lost 9 of their 10 games coming off the bye. Kind of what you wouldn't expect in terms of being rested and ready. Maybe there's some rust there, but since then, those teams coming off the midweek bye or the weekend bye have won 3 straight games. So now UNC at UVA is up. UNC obviously hasn't played since last Saturday. It could be 4 straight games, but I think it's kind of an interesting little number there, where you would feel like, as much of a grind as the season is, that it would be beneficial to get your legs back under. The UNC guys have said, they flat out said they were tired. It was funny. On Friday, Hubert said they weren't tired. And then on Saturday, after they beat Virginia Tech, RJ Davis and Armando and those guys said, yeah, we're tired. We use the time off. So
just like when I asked, I said, Hubert, has Elliot Cadeau got a confidence issue or something to that effect? He was like, it's not confidence. No. And then the very next day, Elliot Cadeau's like, yeah, I was struggling with my confidence a little bit.
Yeah. Disagreeable, Hubert.
Evan, close out the Virginia discussion. You do the previews. You've already hinted at that a little bit, but give us a little bit more on why Carolina will go to Virginia and come out successful.
I think if I could single out a single player or matchup that I think could really be pivotal for UNC's perspective, I actually think it is going to be Elliot Cadeau. Just because I assume that Reese Beekman is going to guard RJ Davis. I mean, I'm not a coach, but I would think that'd be the obvious choice, which leaves Isaac McNeely to guard Elliot Cadeau. And I don't know if Isaac McNeely can stay in front of Elliot Cadeau. I mean, there aren't many guards in the conference that I think can. And I think of all the guards, McNeely would probably be pretty low on my list in terms of the conference as a whole. And obviously, Virginia is known for that pack line, and I've always been really good at help defense and not getting out of position. But I think when you have a guard like Cadeau, who's kind of flashed the ability to have just elite vision, especially when he kind of gets penetration. I mean, you saw him flash it a few times when he was in the middle of the 2-3, offense breaking a Syracuse down. So I think that's something that it could be pretty pivotal. And it's also, in terms of Cadeau being a freshman, Virginia is a team that can frustrate you at times. And there are going to be moments in this game where UNC could go scoreless for 3+ minutes at a time. And it's going to require Elliot to kind of have that mental maturity to be able to play through those lulls, because though you might not score for 3-4 minutes at a time, I also don't think Virginia is going to torch you for, a 15-0 run in the span of 3 or 4 minutes. So I think if there's really just one player, one matchup specifically that I think UNC has the advantage over and is also going to be one that proves pivotal, it's definitely going to be that Elliot Cadeau, Isaac McNeely kind of matchup there.
Young man showing mental maturity, Evan Rogers. You can't beat it. You've been taught well, and you take training very well from the elder statesman Adam Smith. John Bauman, last final stat before we move to the final feel-good story of the week.
This one is from the Cavaliers' previous game against Virginia Tech, something to keep an eye on Saturday as well. In that game, the Hokies had a 24-4 advantage in points off turnovers. That is somewhere where UNC can really exploit pushing the ball in transition, generating live ball turnovers. It maybe always hasn't been something that UNC has been great at this season, but I think that's another kind of area, if we're looking for places on the margins where UNC can make a difference and go on the road and win that game, I'd keep an eye on fast break points and points off of turnovers.
I still can't get over how Virginia Tech just beat the hell out of them. I mean, it was unbelievable watching. Anyway, let me talk about Congruity. They're our final sponsor. You can see them around the margins of our beautiful faces. They are the HR place you want to go with your small or mid-sized business. Go to congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. You get a free assessment if you're an Inside Carolina reader or watcher or listener. They take care of you. They'll give you some advice. They'll offer you their help. And if you want it, take it. If you don't, it was free, so you don't lose anything. But what you can be promised is great customer service, great technical support. All the guys there will do everything they can. They grew their business from a small business, North Carolina-based business, to a national business. They can do the same for you. They handle all that stuff. So go to congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. Check them out. Fill out your assessment. And also Johnny T-shirt. Those two great sponsors of Inside Carolina. So make sure you look after them because they certainly take care of us. Okay, guys, story time. And this one's pretty awesome. If you're watching this and you haven't read Evan's story about Tyler Nickel and his return to the Smith Center, I think we were debating it last Friday, and I guess we all settled that it was the first time a transfer from Carolina had come back to Carolina to play against the Tar Heels. In modern times, we're not talking about back in war days where people would go off to war as Tar Heel and come back as a Wolfpack, or vice versa. But Tyler Nickel makes a return, and he looked pretty good out there. He looked like he had some fun. But Evan, I'll let you and Adam sort of share the story about how your story came about between him and Seth Trimble and the rest of the Tar Heels.
Yeah, so early on when we were talking to the UNC guys, I actually went over to Seth first and kind of asked him about his relationship with Tyler Nickel, because I'd noticed in the handshake line that he and Tyler were at the end of their respective lines, and they really held an embrace and hugged each other for a good 20 seconds almost. And it was pretty prolonged. And he kind of dove into, obviously they were roommates last year together as freshmen, along with Jalen Washington and Will Shaver. And he said that the four of those guys actually still talk with each other in the same group text, and he tries to talk with Tyler almost every other day. So as soon as I kind of got that information and heard Seth kind of talk about his relationship, and obviously, like you had mentioned, TA, Tyler had a good game. I mean, he hit 4 threes. There's a cool stat that I found from his freshman year. He hit 4 threes in the Smith Center across the whole season, and he hit 4 on Saturday. So after I had heard that, I was like, and me and Adam had kind of been discussing about, the potential and the possibility of doing a Tyler Nickel story. So I was like, okay, I think I'm going to take this story. And it's toward the end of the UNC player interviews, and it's kind of filtering out as people kind of get over to the coach's press conference with Coach Davis. And I tell Adam, I'm like, I'm going to go see if I can find Tyler Nickel right outside the visitors locker room, which is right next to the Media Work Center. So I walk over there and try to find someone who I think might be in the sports information department or something like that at Virginia Tech. And there's this lady outside of the locker room, and I'm like, can I talk to Tyler Nickel? I introduced myself, told her who I was with, what I was doing, just wanted to speak with him for 2-3 minutes. She's like, sorry, hun, all the players are on the bus. We've ended player interviews. I'm like, dang. And as she's telling me that, Tyler Nickel and Seth Trimble walk right by me, and they're walking to their parents. And I kind of look at them, and then I look back at her, and she's like, no, I don't think we're going to be able to do it. He's got to talk with his family. I'm like, okay. So in my head, I'm like, well, I'm young, I'm 20, I probably don't have the authority that my good friend Adam Smith might have. I don't have the Southern charm that Adam brings when he's trying to sway somebody. So I make my way back to the UNC player press conference room and tell Adam my story about how the players were on the bus, but Tyler Nickel had just happened to walk by me, and he was in fact not on the bus. So Adam finishes up with the players, and actually I'll let Adam take it over from here.
I'm not trying to get in on your story, bet.
No, because this is where the star of the show shifted to Adam. He was the one. He was the one trying to convince and made the eye contact, and he was really the one that made the interview possible. And it was great. I mean, it turned out great. We got Tyler for, I think we got it at 110 seconds, so less than 2 minutes. We were promised 3, but we'll take 2. But he was great. It was really fun to hear him talk about, obviously, the block he had on Seth. there. I think, was it late in the first half maybe when he had that, which was
say?
really funny.
Guys, the audio is tremendous.
It's awesome.
We all
It's
know
awesome.
the kind of voice Tyler Nichols bringing to the table. I mean, the
Yeah.
audio. I have shared the audio with some of my friends and family. Just when he's going like, it's all competition. It's the audio is tremendous.
He was like, "Yeah, I got that one on him for now. He's real mad.
He's
about
sick
it too.
about it. That's what he said. He's just sick about it. I got that one on him. My whole thing is, and like, I'm not trying to get, me. I'm always trying to keep it fun. I'm not trying to get serious, but number one off the top, I personally love the fact that Evan and I are talking about this, and Evan's like, sure, I will go try to find Tyler Nickel. I love that. I mean, just the fact that he's like leaving the UNC players where, the job is to talk to the UNC players. But I mean, this is a special situation. And I just love the fact that he went down there. It's not a short walk. He had to weave through a bunch of stuff. And then he gets down there, and it pissed me off a little bit. This lady, it could be a man, whoever, this person who is supposed to be sort of helping you, do these things. I mean, she's supposed to be promoting her team, is she not? And she's just like lied to him. Like
this is a Virginia Tech person. Just to be perfectly clear, this is a Virginia Tech
Tech person. Well, we found out who it was later. It's the chief of staff of Virginia Tech basketball, whatever the heck that means. But when Evan came back, Evan came back when he had been denied, and I was like, well, that sucks. I was kind of thinking like, this will not stand. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to accept it. We're not accepting this. We're just not going to do it. So we got lucky in that when we got done with the UNC players, because, the more I thought about it, like, let's do this story. We got a one-shot opportunity here. Tyler Nickel comes back. He has a nice game. And like you guys were saying, this is super unique. We believe it has never happened in modern history that a former Carolina player has come back to the Dean Dome and played. So we got lucky because when we got done with the UNC players, usually what you're doing, sometimes we're a little late because we usually stay in with the players as long as we can. Usually Hubert is ready to speak when the players are finished. So you walk out of like the lounge area there in the Dean Dome, you walk to the press room area, and usually here comes Hubert, like clockwork in, and you're going with him. So we get back to the press room. Everyone is in the press room, all the reporters. It's probably what? I don't know, 30, 40 people in there, Evan, maybe something like that. 40 might be too much, but it's packed. And I was thinking like, damn, we're about to just like leave. Like, everyone is in there waiting on Hubert to come in. He hasn't come in yet. That's where we got lucky. So I looked at Evan. I was like, you want to try Tyler Nickel again? Like, you want to see if we can make this thing happen? And he was like, yeah. So literally everyone else that covers UNC is in there waiting on Hubert. We leave. And so sure enough, we find that lady. She's got a Karen cut, just to give you a visual. It's not the prettiest thing you've ever seen. And so I'm sort of playing dumb. And I'm like, hey, yeah, we just wanted to get Tyler real quick. Because we can see him. That's the other thing. We can see him when we get there in front of the visitor locker room at the Dean Dome. We can see 10, 15, 20 feet away, Tyler Nickel, his mom, his dad, family members, Seth Trimble's mom, Seth Trimble's dad, family member. Everybody's just having a nice time. So, I say it to her, and she's just like, no, we're not going to be able to do it. We can't do it. You guys missed your window, I think she said, or something. She couldn't have been more unhelpful. So anyway, I start staring a hole through Tyler Nickel, and sure enough, he looks at me, gives me the head nod, like, hey, what's up? Like that. I start waving at him like a dang third base coach on speed. I'm like, come over here, right? And so he gives me the other head nod, like, yeah, sort of like, I'll be there in just a second. Has some kisses for his family before he departs. And sure enough, what happens? Here comes Tyler Nickel over to Evan and Adam. This lady's sitting there, and like, it's kind of like, in your face, lady. You know what I mean? And I had told her, I was like, we covered him last year, which is true because I did. Evan did too. Evan did for the DTH. I said, we covered him last year. We're just trying to catch up with him. And so he comes over and he's like, what's up, man? And sure enough, we got to interview Tyler Nickel for, I believe I had it for 1:55 while mine was running. I was begging her for 3 minutes. She said, she goes, as soon as coach comes out, we're going to have to get on the bus. Yeah, Mike Young was in there talking to Bubba Cunningham. They were like goofing off in the locker room. Like it was not, as my son says all the time, it's not that deep. It was not that serious. And so I loved it. I loved it. T. Nick said, yes, I know these, effectively said, yes, I know these guys. I will talk to them. That we got the interview. I would urge everyone to go to Inside Carolina or Google it and read it. It's the only story you'll see about Tyler Nickel coming back to UNC. And it's great. And the quotes from Tyler Nickel are great. And the quotes from Seth Trimble and RJ Davis are great. It was good. So that we weren't going to be denied. And we might strike out 10 more times like that, but dadgummit, we got that one and it was good. And Tyler Nickel was happy to see us, man. Like he was happy to do the interview. You think he wants to turn down an interview? And then after that, our guy Sherelle, I saw him in the chat, relayed to us that T. Nick's dad and his high school coach had reached out to him, thanking IC for doing the story. I mean, it was a win all around. And I was proud of Evan. Yet another thing I was proud of Evan for, that he was down to do it, and we did it, So I thought it was cool. It honestly was a if I had to file a report for our guy Ben Sherman, I would say this was a really good lesson for Evan in terms of just being persistent, and if you want to do the story, going and getting it. So we went and got it. I was happy about it.
And It speaks to the team effort of Inside Carolina, because IC has sometimes 4 people at the game. So that Jalen is going to get Hubert. That Jeremiah is probably there as well. He's getting Hubert. So you guys are free to chase these stories. You guys are forgetting about Pee Wee Ryan, who in 1901 transferred after, World War Z. No, I'm just kidding.
You're probably right.
There, I don't know.
That was
That's probably the stat, though. Really.
I dropped the link to the article in the YouTube chat so folks can check that out. But another cool aspect of sort of behind the scenes inside baseball deal is when we were sitting in the press room last Friday talking about trying to figure out when was his last transfer. And I remember Larry Davis because he was at school when I was there and all, but talking about Nickel and coming back and all that stuff. And to listen to some of the old heads in there, which unfortunately we are now part of that crowd, Adam, sort of debate the history of Carolina basketball and all that kind of stuff. It was an interesting conversation. I'm sure it'll happen again, given the nature of the sport these days. But once upon a time, the only time you change teams is like you said, John, joking. Bones McKinney goes off to war, comes back, plays at Carolina. So he plays at State, plays at Carolina, coaches Wake Forest in his career. Those days, I guess, are upon us again. It's not war, it's the transfer portal. Anything left, guys? It's been a fun show, informative show. I hope folks have enjoyed y'all's stories. And you just can't get it anywhere else other than Inside Carolina's On the Beat. Anything left, Adam?
Print the shirts. It's not.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, you need to make that a shirt. It's not worth the transfer portal.
Where is Michelle? I mean, we need it. We need a TA. It's not worth the transfer. That's a hell of a quote, man.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I'll sign it. I'll $600 and a free video game. That'll be my deal on that. Speaking of which, we're gonna get a pool going with the NCAA 25 whenever that comes out. So y'all boys better get your systems and practice up. Had some people beat my ass in the chat several years ago on it. I'm gonna be ready this time when it comes around. John Bauman, anything left before we get out?
I want to give a shout out to my co-host, if you want to say that. Justin Jackson is back in the NBA. That's a huge accomplishment for him. He has worked his butt off the last few years in the G League. He gets a 10-day contract up in Minnesota, so very cool. I have spoken with Justin and his team, who is just Justin's guy, Carlos. The podcast will continue. I know there were a lot of people who are nervous, saying, what will we do without this? The podcast will continue. He will just probably be in nicer hotel rooms now that he's in the NBA with this 10-day contract. So, yeah, just want to give him a shout out. I know that's big for the former Tar Heel.
And
Yeah.
you guys do a great job with that show, John. I love that show. It's so funny that you say that. I actually had that thought. I'm like, I can't wait to see where Justin Jackson is going to be now. Like, let's see the insides of these places, man.
We go from the Best Western to the Ritz-Carlton. I mean, but shout out to him, to your point about sticking with it and all, because I mean, these guys, they bust their rear ends, and the G League's cool and all. But like he said, I think early in one of your shows that y'all did, he was going to give it another go and try to push it again to see if he could get to the league. And here he is, 10-day contract and with the Timberwolves. So that's pretty interesting. Last thoughts, Evan? Are we out?
I liked Adam's Judgment Day thing that I already mentioned earlier in the show. I just think this is a big weekend for ACC basketball, just in terms of UNC, in terms of the conference as a whole. I think you're going to find out really who's going to be at the top of the league, who's going to be in contention for the NCAA tournament. I would not be surprised if maybe Steve Ford's printed out like an ESPN bracketology or Joe Lunardi's face and like put it in each of their lockers, going into the game. Speaking of which, Steve Ford's versus Joe Lunardi, that's a great rivalry that's kind of heating up here as of late. But I'm getting sidetracked. But yeah, I think this is a game in terms of UNC. If they do end up winning the ACC regular season, or if they're in that contention, this is going to be the deciding game down the stretch that kind of either catapults them or really puts them a step behind.
Yep, I agree. Big weekend in ACC basketball. Shout out to all the folks that have joined us in the chat. A lot of good comments, a lot of stuff. David, here's what's funny, and I'm going to get out of here. I mentioned they hadn't won anything, but I did mention they went to the Final Four. And yes, it does count for something, but I got to give Triple Horn with the return mic drop. Hubert said they don't hang banners for beating Duke. That's why the ACC regular season is so important for this group. Shout out to Sean Crawley for remembering Charlotte Smith's shot in '94. I was watching that on a 13-inch tube TV in my childhood bedroom. I had to have a place to live when I came back from college. Watched that shot happen. And then for later, maybe one day, if you could ask Coach K one question, what would it be? Keep it clean. Shout out to Bart, who I know on the side. A lot of good stuff. I will say this. Is it the 28th that the K and Roy Williams things come out?
I think that's right. End of the month. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's the 28th after maybe a game before that on ACC Network. They're dropping the Roy Williams and Coach K conversation that they had with West Durham, I guess, last summer. It's going to be fantastic. You get those guys. You say what you want to about Coach K, and I get it, but when you get Roy Williams and Coach K together, and those dudes are talking basketball and rivalry and state of the game and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be pretty awesome. Can't wait to see it. Wish we could get our hands on the B-roll and all the stuff on the cutting floor, but maybe one day. But yeah, something to look for next week. Next thing to look for is us. Next week, next Thursday night, on the Beat Live, plenty of Inside Carolina content. In the meantime, Adam, you're going to Virginia. Evan, you going to Virginia? Road tripping to Virginia. Y'all stay safe, going to land of Thomas Jefferson. Stay tuned for the Inside Carolina postgame podcast after that game, and then all the content from these guys, and especially the photographs from Jim Hawkins. Everybody take care. Johnny T-shirt and congruity. It's been fun.